This is Kurtop with you, and these are 100 mysterious metals and alloys that modern technology cannot replicate. Sphere from Colombia. In March 2025, a metallic sphere fell from the sky over the city of Buga in Colombia. The weight is around 2 kilograms and the temperature is below expected. Inside, there are 13 microspheres surrounding a dense core. The layers look like metal, but there are no traces of welding or joints. Scientists are studying this, but one thing is clear: the object doesn't appear to be from Earth. Radiologist Jose Luis Velasquez stated that he did not find any signs indicating human manufacturing. The structure is solid, the material is 3-layered, and the source is unknown. But skeptics are not silent, and many claim that the pattern on the object was generated by artificial intelligence. The lines are uneven, and the design is too human-like. Plus, Jaime Maussan, a well-known ufologist whose previous claims about aliens turned out to be unproven, has reappeared in the story. No one has given a definite answer yet, but the question remains: if it's not satellite debris, not part of a rocket, and not a fake, then what exactly fell to Earth and why now? The Ife bronze heads were created between the 12th and 15th centuries in what is now Nigeria. These sculptures were made using the lost wax casting method and are notable for their high accuracy in depicting facial proportions. Fine lines, repeating scars, decorations, and elements of headdresses can be seen on the surface. The holes on the tops of the heads indicate the installation of crowns or other symbols of authority. Most researchers associate these heads with rulers or ritual images of the elite. Their production required temperature control, high-quality alloys, and complex molds. The findings demonstrate advanced metallurgy and a stable artistic tradition that existed in Ife long before contact with Europe. These heads were not portraits in the modern sense, but they reflected a person's status and sacred role. The curse and splendor of the Golden Empires. If Varna showed us the birth of elites, then the following discoveries demonstrate the peak of their power. Gold became a metaphor for immortality, and the most famous example here is undoubtedly Tutankhamun. His tomb, discovered by Howard Carter in 1922, is still considered the benchmark of an archaeological sensation. This is not just decoration, it's a time capsule created to preserve the flesh of a living god forever. The golden mask, adorned with lapis lazuli and rare glass, became the face of an entire era, but Tutankhamun was not alone in his passion for the sun metal. On the other side of the world, in the Andes, Spanish conquistadors went mad for centuries searching for the mythical land of El Dorado. Millions of lives were lost in the jungles for the phantom of the Golden City. But the most ironic thing is that El Dorado is not a place, it's a person. The Muisca people held initiation rituals for their new chief, which still seemed like a scene from a science fiction movie. The ruler's body was covered with sticky resin and literally sprinkled with gold dust until he turned into a living statue. He was taken on a raft to the center of Lake Guatavita, where he threw emeralds and gold figurines into the water, then dived in, washing off the gold as an offering to the gods. For a long time, this was considered a fairy tale, until in 1969, an ordinary Colombian farmer in the town of Pasca found a fruit in a field, Muisca. This is a tiny artifact made from a unique alloy called tumbaga, a mixture of gold, silver, and copper, with a strange pinkish-yellow hue. This item became physical proof of the legend for which oceans of blood were spilled. But if you think that all the great treasures have already been found, remember the story of Tel Tepe, or the Golden Hill, in Afghanistan. In 1978, just weeks before the start of the Soviet-Afghan War, the Soviet-Afghan expedition led by Viktor Sarionidy excavated 6 burial mounds. What they saw would be called the discovery of the century. More than 20,600 gold items, necklaces, belts inlaid with precious stones, and an incredible folding gold crown. It was the burial of nomadic princes of Bactria, who lived at the crossroads of eras. Amazingly, these ornaments combined the styles of Greeks, Persians, Indians, and Chinese. It was a melting pot of cultures, frozen in pure gold. These treasures survived thousands of years in the earth, then decades of civil wars. The Taliban hid them in the basements of the National Bank, and they were considered lost. But they keep coming back to us, reminding us that empires fall, leaders turn to dust, but the shine of gold remains an eternal witness to our ambitions. A Sword Beyond Time, Hubei, China, 1965, Hubei. From a flooded tomb, they retrieve a wooden scabbard, and inside it a bronze blade that has lain in water for 2,500 years and still shines. This is the sword of Gujian, the ruler of the Yue kingdom. The metal amazed everyone. It was bronze with additives that slow down corrosion. The surface is polished to a mirror finish. The geometric pattern on the fuller hasn't worn off, and after conservation, the blade easily cuts through a sheet of paper. The handle was once wrapped in silk, the guard is decorated with inlays, and 8 ancient hieroglyphs are engraved on the blade. Gujian, king of Yue, made this sword for himself. The inscription identifies the owner, whom Chinese chronicles described as a stubborn ruler. He survived defeat, regained his strength, and took revenge. Why did the blade endure for centuries? The dense lacquered scabbard hardly let any oxygen through. The water in the tomb was still, and the bronze composition was chosen so that the edge would hold, creating a perfect capsule. The sword of Gujian breaks the usual image of crude, ancient weapons. Before us is a product of advanced technology and personal status that has survived to our time. A Valkyrie made of silver. In the Danish village of Herby, during a routine archaeological survey, a small figurine was found, only 3.5 centimeters tall, made of silver. But it's immediately clear that it is not accidental. A woman with a sword, a round shield in one hand, the other arm extended downward, a dress with fine folds, her hair tied in a knot, her face focused, not a deity, not an ornament, not a toy. She is armed. The find is dated to around the year 800, and it is the first of its kind discovered in Scandinavia. At first, scientists decided that this was a mythical Valkyrie, a messenger of the gods. But then other versions began to appear. Maybe this isn't a spirit at all, but a person? In Viking sagas, women are mentioned who fought, were skalds, warriors, and seeresses. Some burials with weapons did indeed belong to women, as confirmed by DNA analyses. The figurine could have been part of a ritual staff, a personal talisman, or a depiction of a specific woman, someone who was respected and feared. In any case, the image of a strong, armed woman in the Viking Age is not a work of fiction. It's reality, just long hidden under layers of convenient assumptions. She says nothing, but her stance, her shield, her sword have already said it all. Bone multi-tool, Belgium, Skladina Cave. Archaeologists find the shin bone of a cave lion, a giant predator that Neanderthals themselves usually feared. But this bone has lived a second life. There are 4 different tools on it. One end was used for working wood, the long side is worn down, and was used to sharpen flint blades. The adjacent section is smoothed into a rounded scraper for cleaning hides, while the opposite tip was left sharp for piercing skin or hides. The layer is about 130,000 years old, the end of the Salian glaciation. The people who left behind this multi-tool didn't just break the bone for a sharp point. They invented the true ancestor of the Swiss Army knife. Small notches have been preserved on the surface, traces of at least 2 stages of resharpening. This is both efficiency and technology. Clearly, instead of 4 separate tools, there's just one, but it's modular. The fact that lion bone was chosen as the material is also noteworthy. It's thick-walled, resilient, and holds a cutting edge longer than deer bone. So, killing a predator became not only a hunting victory, but also a source of premium raw material for future weapons and tools. As a result, we see the first multifunctional tool in history. The Stone Age didn't need rivets to invent the principle of the Swiss Army knife. Maya cosmogram, 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 Maya cosmogram. In Mexico, in the state of Tabasco, archaeologists studied the Aguada Phoenix site, a huge earthen structure hidden under the forest. It's almost invisible in satellite images, but LiDAR, laser scanning technology that can remove vegetation, revealed the clear outlines of a platform nearly 1.5 kilometers long. This structure turned out to be older than all known Maya centers, dating back to around 1000 before Christ, which is 1,000 years earlier than the appearance of their famous pyramids and cities. They found remains of canals, dams, and straight roads around the platform. It looks like a carefully planned complex built without stone, only from earth and clay. Scientists call Aguada Phoenix a cosmogram. It's not a temple or a city, but rather a symbolic space, a model of the world embodied in the landscape. Here, judging by the findings, there were mass gatherings, rituals, and feasts, but there are no traces of kings, palaces, or sculptures. All of this appears to have been built collectively by communities without a central authority or leader. This discovery was unexpected for archaeologists. It was previously believed that the monumental structures of Umayyah appeared only after the formation of complex cities and elites. Aguada Phoenix shows the opposite. Large structures could have appeared before states as a result of collective efforts. Today, the site continues to be studied. For the people of the region, it is becoming a point of pride, and for archaeologists, a reminder that history does not always develop in a straight line. Sometimes people create not for power, but for an idea. The three-dimensional code of a vanished empire. The great empire of the Incas. They built perfect roads and cities in the clouds, but it is believed that they had no writing, at least not on paper or stone. But the Incas created something more advanced. Quipu is a system of knots on colored cords, which scientists in 2026 call an ancient analog server. It's not just a reminder quipu, it's a complex code. Loops in a knot represented numbers, thread color showed a category like gold, warriors, or taxes, and knot spacing indicated the decimal place. But there's a theory that excites linguists. Gary Wharton from Harvard suggests that quipu used a binary code similar to that of a computer. These threads could have encoded not only numbers, but also entire phrases, names, and historical chronicles. The Spanish conquistadors were terrified of these cords. They realized that the Incas were passing secret messages right under their noses and began to destroy the artifacts on a massive scale. Only a few hundred have survived to this day. There is a chronicle about the quipu. An old Indian confessed to the boys that all their misdeeds were recorded in his quipu. For this revelation, both he and his book made of threads were destroyed. Today, the quipus are a silent challenge to science. We have learned to read cuneiform, but we still cannot fully crack the code that can be felt by touch. Antarctic sarcophagi. During an international scientific expedition in Antarctica, a group of researchers from the United States, China, Russia, and India discovered an object that immediately sparked controversy and concern. At a depth of several dozen meters beneath the permafrost, 4 dark sarcophagi were found, smooth even, with corners and edges so perfect that it could indicate laser processing. The shape resembled monolithic slabs, and the sarcophagi themselves maintained a stable temperature above zero, despite the surrounding cold. Researchers recorded a low-frequency humming and slight vibrations of the ground in the immediate vicinity of the objects, although none of the equipment in the camp could have been the source of such vibrations. When one of the sarcophagi was opened, a metal cylinder was found, with symbols that did not belong to any known writing system. Scientists have proposed several theories about the origin of the find. One hypothesis suggests that the sarcophagi may be remnants of an ancient civilization that existed before the last ice age, while another allows for a technological origin and a connection to as yet unidentified technological experiments. During the Cold War era, supporters of ufological theories think this is a fragment of an extraterrestrial structure, left or hidden under the ice for thousands of years. Despite the public outcry, official data about the incident remains limited, and the sarcophagi themselves were taken away for further study in closed laboratories. The oldest doors in Rome, the bronze doors of the Pantheon in Rome, were cast during the reign of Emperor Hadrian, around 115 AD, and they remain in place to this day. Each leaf is about 7.6 meters high and more than 2 meters wide. The structure is made of solid bronze and designed for durability. The hinges, fastenings, and proportions allowed the doors to be used daily without additional mechanisms. The surface has preserved traces of time, but the geometry and functionality have remained unchanged. These doors were originally created as part of an architectural ensemble, not as a decorative element. Their production required large casting molds, precise calculations, and access to significant resources. The doors continue to serve their function, having been in active use for almost 2,000 years. The first in Russia under the meadow. In the Tolmachevsky quarry, they found something you usually see in textbooks, not in the sand at a quarry, a petrified stump with real roots. The age is about 385 million years. This is the late Devonian, a time when land was just beginning to turn green. At first, everyone thought it was a prototaxid, the ancient column-shaped organisms famous in this area, but the roots made it clear this wasn't a column fungus, but an actual tree. The find was made by P.O. The amateur paleontologist noticed a large piece in the sand that didn't look like an ordinary stone and showed it to the specialists. Then scientists from St. Petersburg State University got involved, carefully excavated and documented the sample, and sent it to the lab. By examining thin sections and tissue structure, they will more precisely determine its species and age. It's important that there were already the first forests here. The root systems held the soil, changed water runoff, and influenced the carbon balance. Simply put, this was the beginning of the forested planet we're used to. You could pile up a lot of scientific terms here. There were scientists who went looking for a giant fungus but ended up finding the ancestor of our forests. Now they have to compare the specimen with known Devonian trees and determine exactly what it was. Even if the species name is still in question, the discovery itself already changes the local picture of the past. 100 years underground. In the Czech Republic, archaeologists discovered an unusual treasure, which turned out not to be ancient but quite recent, only about 100 years old. A gold treasure was found in a village hidden in the early 20th century. Some coins and jewelry clearly date from a period after the Middle Ages. The treasure was found in an old building that once belonged to a family engaged in trade. When World War I began, their business collapsed, and the money was apparently hidden to wait out the hard times. But they never returned, leaving their treasure in an inaccessible place. Part of the gold, apparently, was collected from several sources: coins from different countries, jewelry, rare metals. This treasure is interesting not only because of its value, but also because of the story behind it. It reminds us how people try to preserve their wealth when the world around them is falling apart. Many of these items are now on display in museums, and the treasure has become a symbol of lost hopes and destinies. The first medical diagnosis in human history. Archaeology is not just about searching for gold. Sometimes it's about searching for answers to what exactly makes us human. In 1963, in the Italian Romito cave, scientists found a double burial that became a mystery for decades. Two skeletons lying in an embrace, a grown woman and a teenager. But only in 2025, thanks to revolutionary DNA analysis, did this story turn into a real medical detective story. Meet the girl whom archaeologists named Romito II. She lived 12,000 years ago during the Paleolithic era, when life was a struggle for survival. Scientists discovered something incredible. This is the earliest confirmed case in history of a rare genetic disease, psychical dysplasia. Simply put, the girl had a rare form of dwarfism. She was only 110 centimeters tall, had abnormally short arms and legs, found it difficult to move across rough terrain, and every movement of her elbows or wrists caused her discomfort. But the most striking thing here is not the disease itself, but how she was treated in an era we usually consider harsh and primitive. This girl was not abandoned. DNA analysis showed that the woman in whose arms she was buried, Romito I, was either her mother or her biological sister. Despite her physical limitations, Romito II lived to adolescence. This means that the hunter-gatherer community took care of her for many years, fed her, and possibly carried her in their arms when the tribe moved to new places. Scientists found mutations in both copies of the natriuretic peptide receptor 2 gene, which is responsible for bone growth. This is the oldest case of familial genetic predisposition ever recorded by science. We see love and compassion frozen in stone for 12 millennia. This discovery overturns our understanding of wild ancestors. It turns out that social support and care for the weak existed long before the first cities and states appeared. The girl from the Romito cave proved that humanity is older than civilization. The handle of the knife in the shape of a gladiator archaeologist found a rare artifact, a handle from a folding copper knife in the shape of a miniature gladiator. The find is more than 2,000 years old. It was discovered by divers in the River Tyne, near Corbridge, a Roman settlement in North Cumberland, next to Hadrian's Wall. This is rare evidence that admiration for Roman gladiators reached even the outskirts of the empire. The handle depicts a secutor gladiator, a powerful warrior in heavy armor, with a closed helmet and large weapon. The unique feature of the figurine is that it depicts a left-handed person, which is surprising because in ancient Rome, this was considered a bad omen. It is possible that the figurine represents a specific warrior who was specially trained to use his left hand in order to gain an advantage in the arena. Gladiators, despite often being slaves or convicted criminals, could become real stars of their time. Their battles attracted crowds of spectators to the amphitheaters, and victories turned the fighters into legends. Even today, their romanticized image continues to attract attention, as proven by the success of movies like Gladiator. How the hilt ended up in the river and who its owner was remains a mystery. The oldest shopping list. When going to the store, many of us make a list of necessary items on a piece of paper or in a smartphone notebook. But it wasn't always like this. During excavations in southern Turkey, archaeologists discovered a unique clay tablet with Akkadian cuneiform, which turned out to be the oldest known shopping list. This document, created 3,500 years ago, gives us an insight into the daily life of people of that time. The tablet was found in the ruins of the ancient city of Alalak, which attracted the attention of scholars as early as the first half of the 20th century. But due to the war, excavations were suspended and only resumed in the 2000s. Recently, after the 2023 earthquake, another clay tablet was discovered during restoration work in Alalak. It measures 4.2 by 3.5 cm and is 1.6 centimeter thick. Deciphering the inscription revealed that it is a shopping list, including wooden tables, chairs, and stools. The document also mentions the names of buyers and sellers, making it an important source for understanding trade and everyday relationships in the 15th century before Christ. According to Turkish archaeologists, this is the oldest shopping list that has survived to this day, and it is of great value for studying the history of the ancient Near East. The golden explosion before the beginning of history. In 1972, on the outskirts of the Bulgarian city of Varna, workers were digging a trench for a cable, an ordinary industrial area, a random landscape. But suddenly something shone brightly in the excavator's bucket. The workers stopped, expecting to find a World War II treasure, or, at best, Roman coins. But what they pulled out of the ground made historians around the world rewrite entire chapters of textbooks. It wasn't just a treasure. It was a huge necropolis, a city of the dead, belonging to a culture about which science knew almost nothing. But the most shocking thing is the age, 4,600 before Christ. Just think, when the pyramids of Egypt were being built, these finds were already 2,000 years old. When Stonehenge was just being designed, the gold of Varna was already an ancient antique. This is the oldest processed gold in human history found to date. The central place in this discovery is occupied by grave number 43. A man about 45 years old was buried there, and his body was literally immersed. Archaeologists counted more than 900 gold items in the grave, with a total weight of 1.5 kilograms. Gold bracelets, massive necklaces, arrowheads, and even a gold sheath for the penis. In his hands was a gold sheath, an axe wrapped in gold foil, a symbol of absolute power. So what is the main mystery for scientists in 2026? For a long time, it was believed that ancient Europe of that era was egalitarian, meaning people lived in equal communities without kings or servants. The famous archaeologist Maria Gombetis even created a theory about old Europe, where women ruled and society was peaceful and harmonious. But Varna dealt a crushing blow to this theory. An analysis of 294 graves conducted using modern technology revealed a grim reality. Enormous wealth was concentrated in the hands of just 4 or 5 people, while the remaining hundreds were buried with almost nothing, just a couple of flint knives and bone ornaments. This is the earliest recorded case of social inequality. We are seeing the rise of an elite taking everything for themselves. But there is something even more alarming. Some of the Varna graves were empty. They contained gold ornaments, scepters, and even life-size clay masks. But there were no bones. These are cenotaphs, symbolic burials. Whom were they burying? Those who died in distant wars? Or were these rituals to summon deities? And the greatest mystery is the end of this golden empire. Around 4000 before Christ's life in Varna ended abruptly. There are no traces of battles, no burned houses. A whole civilization that possessed incredible metal smelting technologies simply disappeared. According to recent studies, the reason was climatic. The level of the Black Sea suddenly rose, turning fertile valleys into salty lagoons. The golden kings of Varna probably watched as their empire went underwater and were powerless to do anything about it. Today, some of their settlements are indeed on the seafloor, preserving the secrets of the first Stone Age oligarchs. The golden intimate ornament belongs to the Sinu culture, which existed in the north of present-day Colombia before the arrival of the Spanish. It is made of high-purity gold and was intended to be worn in the intimate area. This fact puzzled researchers for a long time, but today it is seen as part of a complex system of bodily symbolism. In the society of Sinu, jewelry was not just decorative items, but markers of status, age, and a person's stage of life. Gold played a special role here. It was not considered currency or a means of accumulating wealth, but was associated with the sun, fertility, and renewal. Jewelry placed in areas associated with procreation emphasized the vitality and social maturity of the owner. Such items are often found in the graves of noble people, which indicates their ritual significance. The manufacturing technology indicates a high level of metallurgy, lost wax casting, precise symmetry, and fine movable elements. Such ornaments were made individually and probably accompanied a person throughout their life. After death, they entered the burial context, affirming the status of the deceased in the other world. He burned down a wonder of the world for likes in ancient Ephesus in the west. Along the coast, closer to Asia Minor, archaeologists restored the outlines of the famous Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the world. Only fragments of columns and the foundation remain of it, but even that is enough to understand the scale. However, one of the strangest and saddest stories of antiquity is connected with the temple, the story of Herostratus in 356 before Christ. He set fire to the temple not out of revenge or faith, but for fame. Herostratus wanted his name to be remembered, even if he had to pay for it with his life. Legend says the temple burned down the night Alexander the Great was born. The fire destroyed one of the greatest structures of the ancient world and became an example of senseless destruction after the fire. The authorities of Ephesus forbade mentioning Herostratus' name under penalty of death, but this ban had the opposite effect. The name was preserved. The historian Theopompus recorded it, and with it, the very paradox. The man who destroyed a masterpiece became immortal precisely because of his crime. When archaeologists in the 20th century excavated the lower layers of the sanctuary, they found traces of the ancient fire, charred beams, and melted fragments of tiles. And even in these pieces of ash, a strange irony can be felt. The greatest temple of its era was destroyed not by enemies, not by a natural disaster, but by a man who wanted to be remembered. Today, the name Herostratus has become a symbol of destructive fame, a reminder that history remembers not only creators, but also those who tried to be remembered at any cost. Even today, we often see bloggers who are willing to do terrible things for the sake of popularity. And it turns out that this kind of behavior was practiced even thousands of years ago. The Byzantine region of Satunku is known to everyone for its ship burial, but nearby, in Bromisville, an equally strange item was found, a copper vessel from the 6th century made in the eastern Mediterranean. On the outside, there's a hunting scene. On the rim, warriors, leaping lions, a continuous display of luxury all around the edge. The Greek inscription says, "Drink to your health, Lord Count, and live happily for many years." But when the base was excavated, no one was left to drink from it. Inside, there were ashes with large pieces of horsebone, a typical marker of Anglo-Saxon nobility. Anglo-Saxon. Among the ashes, they found a carved comb made of deer antler. If DNA is preserved in the teeth, scientists can determine the buried person's sex and age. The Byzantine bowl made its way to Anglo-Saxon Britain, and instead of wine, received the ashes of a nobleman. It's living proof that trade routes crisscrossed Europe long before modern highways. Ice Age art. The mammoth from the Alp-Donau region in Germany is one of the oldest examples of Ice Age art, dating back about 35,000 years. This miniature figurine is carved from mammoth ivory, which in itself is a testament to the skill and artistic sensibility of prehistoric people. Discovered in the 1930s, the artifact became an important link in the study of early human art. The uniqueness of this piece lies not only in its age, but also in its level of detail. There are notches visible on the surface of the figurine, possibly symbolic or decorative, which add an air of mystery to the artifact. They may be early examples of communication or spiritual representations of ancient people. Archaeologists suggest that such figurines might have been used for ritual purposes, serving as hunters' talismans or symbols of luck. The mammoth, symbolizing strength and endurance, likely played an important role in the worldview of primitive tribes, the weapon of giants, and the faded memory of pharaohs. Sometimes archaeologists find objects that look like props from fantasy movies. In the Indian state of Tamil Nadu, something was discovered in an ancient Iron Age burial that left scientists puzzled. It's an iron spear, but forget about standard weapons. The length of this artifact is 2.5 meters. Imagine a warrior holding a spear as tall as the ceiling of a modern apartment. It's massive, heavy, and surprisingly well preserved thanks to the dry climate. But here's the main mystery. The average height of a person in that era in India was significantly shorter than today. How could such a weapon be used physically in battle? Metallurgist scientists are amazed by the quality of the forging. To create such a blade, a temperature of 1,200 to 1,500 degrees Celsius was required. This is an incredible level of technology for that time. The spear was found in a burial urn next to gold ornaments, which indicates the highest status of its owner. Was it used in battle? Some researchers believe that it was. The rounded end of the handle is designed for perfect grip and balance. Others are sure that it was a ceremonial monster, a symbol of power, a leader who was supposed to inspire awe just by his appearance. But while in India we see a symbol of power made of metal, in the Sinai desert, archaeologists found a symbol of power carved in stone. These are rock carvings that are 5,000 years old, some of the oldest evidence of military triumph in history. The scene is frighteningly detailed. A huge figure of an Egyptian in a victorious pose towers over a captive local who is kneeling with an arrow piercing his chest. This is not just a drawing, it's ancient military propaganda. Scientists from the University of Bonn are convinced that Egypt didn't just have deserts, but real colonies that were held by force for the extraction of copper and turquoise. But the most intriguing detail of this ancient comic is the erased name. It's next to the image of a boat and the god Min, the patron of desert roads. Archaeologists found traces of an inscription that was deliberately destroyed. Someone went to great lengths to scrape the pharaoh's name out of history. Was it an ancient conspiracy, revenge by the heirs, or an attempt by local tribes to erase the memory of their oppressor? We see damnatio memoriae, the curse of memory, in action 1,000 years before it became mainstream in Rome. These findings in India and Egypt prove one thing. In the ancient world, status was confirmed either by incredible weapons or by brutal images of triumph that were meant to last for eternity. A giant military memorial. Archaeologists have discovered a 4,000-year-old memorial monument at the site of Banabazi in Syria, resembling the ancient Egyptian step pyramid in Saqqara. This man-made mound, known as the White Monument because of the shine of its building materials, was first studied several decades ago. Recent research has shown that around 2,400 before Christ, the previously existing mound was modified and supplemented with a series of horizontal steps, each containing at least 30 burials sealed with layers of plaster. Ancient Mesopotamian texts mention military memorials where the bodies of enemies were piled up, although such monuments have not yet been found. The White Monument at Tel Banat was likely a memorial for the settlement's inhabitants, not for fallen enemies. The discovery calls into question some traditional ideas in Near Eastern archaeology. The monument was comparable in size to the step pyramid of Djoser in Saqqara, but it was built not from stone, but from earth. The burials in the White Monument were carefully arranged according to ritual customs, along with military equipment, sometimes next to projectiles and animal hides. This fact indicates that the community tried to honor their warriors, a memorial in their honor. An ancient means of payment. A bronze coin attributed to Pontius Pilate, the prefect of Judea, was minted between 26 and 36 AD during the reign of the Roman Emperor Tiberius. This small artifact is a vivid symbol of the power and influence of the Roman Empire in the territory of ancient Judea. Coins from this period reflect not only economic activity, but also the political and religious aspects of the era. On the obverse side of the coin, there was usually an image of a cult object associated with Roman gods, which emphasized Rome's desire to impose its culture. However, this caused conflicts with the local Jewish population, for whom images associated with pagan beliefs could be considered blasphemous. On the reverse side of the coin, symbols such as the cornucopia or drums were often depicted, symbolizing prosperity and control. The inscriptions on the coin mention Tiberius, reinforcing his authority as a ruler. Funerary bread of ancient Egypt. In the foundation deposit of Hatshepsut's tomb, archaeologists discovered bread that had been there for about 3,500 years. These items date back to the New Kingdom era and were placed in the foundation as part of the ritual that accompanied the construction of sacred spaces in ancient Egypt. Such offerings included food, vessels, and tools, which were sealed into the buildings at the foundation level, connecting them with the gods and with the fate of the deceased. Bread symbolized provision, order, and continuous existence. It was not meant for consumption or considered as a food reserve. Its shape and structure have been preserved thanks to isolation and the dry climate. Analysis showed coarse grain milling and impurities, which are characteristic of bread made for ritual purposes. The most ridiculous discoveries in history. Have you ever lost your keys or your phone? It's a common annoyance, right? But in 1992, in the English village of Hoxton, an ordinary loss of a hammer led to a discovery valued at millions of pounds sterling. Farmer Peter Watling lost his work tool in a field and called his friend with a metal detector. They were looking for an old piece of iron, but instead, the device literally went crazy. Emerging from the ground were gold chains, silver spoons, and thousands of coins, not nails. This was the Hoxton hoard, the largest collection of late Roman gold ever found in Britain. 14,865 coins and 200 pieces of table silver. By the way, that lost hammer was also found and is now kept in the British Museum next to the treasures, probably becoming the most valuable tool in history. But if Hoxton is a story of peaceful wealth, then the Staffordshire hoard, discovered in 2009 by Terry Herbert, is gold of war. Terry was just walking with a metal detector in his neighbor's field. The result was almost 4,000 items. But here's what's strange. There were almost no women's ornaments there. It was exclusively military equipment, sword hilts, parts of helmets, and golden fittings torn from the weapons of defeated enemies. Scientists are still debating whether this was the hoard of an ancient armorer or trophies from a bloody battle of Anglo-Saxon kings, hidden in haste and never reclaimed. Sometimes nature itself becomes an archaeologist. In 2015, a powerful storm on the coast of Israel stirred up the sand in the ancient port of Caesarea. Amateur divers who went for a swim after the storm noticed a strange glimmer on the seabed. They thought it was candy wrappers, but when they picked one up, they saw Arabic script. It was the sunken treasure of the Fatimid Caliphate. More than 2,000 gold coins had lain in the seawater for 1,000 years and looked as if they had just been minted. Yesterday, nature swept away excess sand, revealing secrets of the Islamic conquerors. However, such discoveries aren't always celebrated by science. In 1992, a tractor driver on a sugar plantation in Colombia accidentally unearthed a gold mask. The news spread instantly, and within a few days, 5,000 people with shovels came to this field, which became known as Malagana. In a frenzy, they dug up everything, destroying priceless cultural layers and carrying away 4 tons of artifacts. The gold that could have told the story of an entire civilization was melted down for scrap or disappeared into private collections. The world is full of such stories, from the 60-kilogram Pepita Cana nugget in Brazil to the famous Hand of Faith found in Australia by an ordinary prospector. These discoveries remind us, history. It's not just what's written in books, it's what is waiting for its time right beneath our feet, sometimes just a couple of centimeters below the surface. The largest meteorite on Earth. The mysteries of space have always fascinated people, and meteorites serve as evidence of mysterious visits from distant space to Earth. An example of such an incredible visitor is the Hoba meteorite, discovered in Namibia, which still amazes people with its size and history. Unlike the Tunguska meteorite, which left many questions and assumptions, Hoba is tangible evidence of cosmic journeys to our planet. Weighing 60 tons, this giant piece of metal, adorned with ancient rust, now stands proudly in an amphitheater built especially for it and is one of Namibia's main attractions. The story of the meteorite's discovery began in 1918 when farmer Jacobus Brits, while plowing the land, came across an unusual boulder. At first he tried to uproot it, but then, after examining it closely, Brits discovered that what he had found was an iron meteorite, whose composition was later determined to be 81% iron and 17% nickel. This discovery became a sensation, since little was known about meteorites at the time, and the farmer dreamed of hitting the jackpot. The transportation issues of the enormous visitor from space turned out to be so complicated that selling it had to be forgotten. Since then, the Hoba meteorite, whose weight has decreased to 63 tons over time due to chemical erosion and vandalism, has been placed under protection and recognized as a national monument. Today, Hoba not only amazes with its size, but also serves as a living lesson in history and astronomy, reminding us how small and yet important we are in this vast universe. And although tourists continue to leave their marks on it, each scratch is quickly covered by a layer of rust, as if nature itself erases the boundaries between the earthly and the cosmic. International Viking treasures. On the Danish island of Zealand, not far from the city of Slagels, a farmer was searching for a lost ring with a metal detector and came across a signal that turned out to be anything but ordinary. Just a few centimeters beneath the ground lay silver items, bracelets, rings, and fragments of coins. When archaeologists arrived, it became clear that this was a Viking Age hoard. Everything was in a neatly arranged pit covered with stones. Among the items were Arab dirhams, fragments of neck rings, and jewelry made of Baltic amber. The age is about 1,000 years, and that alone says a lot. Silver from the Middle East, amber from the northern coasts, and stamping techniques from Scandinavia. Altogether, this is proof of how far the Vikings' trade routes stretched. Researchers think the treasure was hidden near the end of the 10th century during wars between Danish rulers. The owner may not have had time to return. Many such treasures have been found, but each time the scale is impressive, even in small hoards. Dozens of coins, pieces of melted silver, jewelry, and weapons. This is not a personal savings, but rather a mobile reserve of wealth that could be taken along on a campaign. A ship under the streets of Manhattan. New York is a city that never sleeps, a symbol of modernity and the triumph of concrete. But what if I told you that right now, beneath the feet of thousands of passers-by, 6 meters below the asphalt of Manhattan, there are remains hidden that are older than the United States itself? This story began in 1613 when a Dutch trading ship called the Tiger, under the command of Captain Adrian Block, dropped anchor in the harbor that would later become New York. These were the early years of the region's exploration, long before skyscrapers appeared here. But the expedition ended in disaster. A fire broke out on board, and the Tiger turned into a blazing torch, slowly sinking to the bottom off the coast of the island. 300 years later, in 1916, workers laying a subway line under Manhattan suddenly stumbled upon massive charred logs. Imagine their shock. They expected to see bedrock or dirt, but instead, they found the skeleton of an ancient ship entombed deep within the earth. At that time, technology didn't allow for a detailed analysis, so the find was simply handed over to a museum where it gathered dust for decades. But in 2025, archaeologists and dendrochronologists decided to reopen the investigation. The main question, is this really the legendary Tiger? Scientists use dendrochronology, the analysis of tree rings. Each ring is a kind of genetic code of time. Researchers Martha and Manders and Martha Dominguez Delmas are studying 8 feet of the keel and frames. If the rings show that the tree was felled in the Netherlands at the very beginning of the 17th century, it will become a worldwide sensation. But how did the ship end up in the middle of dry land, 6 meters underground? The answer lies in the greed and ambition of the first settlers. The Dutch and later the British desperately needed new land for construction. They decided the best way to expand the island was by dumping soil, construction debris, and old boats into the water past the shore. The ancient shoreline moved forward, and the sunken tiger gradually became trapped, buried under layers of artificial land. At the excavation site, along with the ship, they also found other artifacts: a Dutch broad-bladed axe, trade beads, clay pipes, and even a small cannon. These items are not just trash. They are traces of the first contacts between Europeans and the Lenape tribe. It was the Native Americans who helped Captain Block survive after the fire and build a new ship, on which he was the first in history to map the East River and the Long Island Sound. Today, the tiger is not just a piece of rotten wood, it is the patient zero of New York's history. And if research confirms its authenticity, we will have physical proof of how the modern metropolis grew on the bones and ruins of the old world. For decades, people searched for the Inca labyrinth beneath the center of Cusco, something they believed was a myth. 16th century chronicles mentioned the underground labyrinth of Chincana, a network of tunnels that began at the Temple of the Sun and extended beneath the city. For a long time, this was considered a legend until archaeologists approached the task without excavations, using acoustic surveys and ground-penetrating radar. The result turned out to be too precise to ignore. Beneath the city, a network of hollow corridors was detected, with a main branch connecting the Coricancha Temple to the Sacsayhuaman fortress. The distance is over 1 kilometer. The tunnels are about 2.5 meters wide and roughly 1.5 meters high. This isn't a secret passage, but a full-fledged underground route. The system has branches in different parts of the city, like a real street network, only hidden beneath the stone. The Incas first dug trenches, then reinforced them with stone walls and beams, turning the space into a stable structure. Now researchers are preparing precise entry points to get inside without destroying the system. All this points to a well-thought-out infrastructure designed for actual movement and control of space at a time when the city above might have been unsafe. Burial of the bundle and the mask? In Peru. In the Pachacamac Archaeological Complex near Lima, more than 70 burial bundles from the Wari culture, dating back to around 200 AD, were found. These discoveries reveal the mysteries of the ancient civilization. Pachacamac, rich in pyramids, plazas, and cemeteries, preserves the history of the Wari people. Researchers discovered burial bundles from 800 to 1100 AD near the temple. They contain unique masks carved from wood and ceramics, which were characteristic of rituals. Archaeologists also found staffs with images of Wari decorated with shells from Ecuador. These items are associated with the staff god, who was important for the spiritual life of the Wari. These discoveries are important for understanding the cultural and religious world of the ancient Andes and their burial traditions. The dagger from Fenyo. During construction work in northern Hungary, in the village of Fenyo, archaeologists found an iron dagger that is more than 3,000 years old. The weapon was lying in an ancient burial next to the remains of pottery and jewelry. This in itself is not uncommon. In the Bronze Age, such items are often found, but this specimen turned out to be special. The blade is made of iron of meteoritic origin. Analysis showed a characteristic ratio of nickel and cobalt, exactly what is found only in extraterrestrial alloys. Essentially, the weapon was made from a fragment that fell from the sky. The age of the find is around the 13th century before Christ, that is, long before people learned to smelt iron from ore. This means that meteoritic metal was the only source of iron at that time, a rare, expensive, and almost sacred material. Such items could belong only to the elite or priests. Similar daggers are found in other regions, from Mesopotamia to Egypt. The most famous example is the dagger from the tombs of Tutankhamun. All of them are made according to the same principle: forged metal, not melted but cut and polished by hand. Scientists suggest that weapons made from celestial iron were seen as a sign of a special connection with the gods. At that time, there was no way to explain the origin of this metal, and so it was valued not for its strength, but for its origin. Vase, Bassano, northern Italy, 15th century. At a wedding, a young bride is given a silver-carved vase as a gift. The night ends with a murder. The bride dies with the vase in her hands and manages to curse the gift. Then the vessel passes through the family, and each new owner soon dies. The story repeats so many times that people begin to fear the object even more than any weapon. By the end of the 20th century, the vase was allegedly dug up again, and inside was a rolled-up note with the inscription in English: "Beware, this vase brings death. The warning failed. A pharmacist, surgeon, and archaeologist died after contact with the object. Desperate, someone threw the vase out a window, almost hitting a police officer. The museum declined it, and it then disappeared. There is very little documentary evidence to support this chain of events. Online, what we have is more of a legend than a verified museum artifact. But the legend has lived on for decades and continues to appear in collections of cursed objects. Some things become part of history not through archaeologists, but because storytellers remembered them. The Golden Feast of the Thracian Kings. This story didn't begin in a professor's office, but at an ordinary brick factory in Bulgaria. In 1949, three brothers, Pavel, Petka, and Mikhail Dikov, were digging clay when their shovels struck something incredible. Vessels appeared from the ground that looked as if they had just been taken from the treasury of the gods. This was the Panagurishte treasure. 9 vessels made of the purest 23-karat gold, both weighing more than 6 kilograms. But it's not the weight that's impressive, it's the craftsmanship, which is over 2,300 years old. The Thracians believed ritual feasts were a way to communicate with the gods. The set includes 7 rhytons, wine vessels shaped like the heads of deer, rams, and Amazons, as well as a huge amphora decorated with scenes from Greek myths. Scientists in 2025, after studying microscopic traces at the bottom of the vessels, discovered remnants of a complex mixture of wine and herbs that likely caused hallucinations. The Thracian king, who drank from these golden heads, literally turned into Dionysus in the eyes of his subjects. This treasure is the rarest evidence of how gold was used to create religious ecstasy and political control. A lucky amulet. Archaeology sometimes reveals not just artifacts, but personalities. Recently in Britain, at a Roman Empire-era settlement, archaeologists unearthed a bronze figurine. Small, rough, almost primitive. At first glance, it's just a piece of metal, but the shape is instantly recognizable. It's a phallus, a common Roman amulet. While it might seem funny today, it was once seen as a powerful protective symbol. Such pendants were worn around the neck, attached to belts, fastened to carriages, and even hung over children's cribs. The phallus wasn't seen as vulgar. It was a talisman, symbolizing strength, life, luck, protection from the evil eye, and misfortune. The find is small, no gold, no carvings, no inscriptions, just bronze worn by time. But that's where its strength lies, because the amulet was clearly used. Someone wore it, fiddled with it in their hands, maybe lost it. Maybe it belonged to a soldier or a merchant or a child. Someone believed that this little thing would keep trouble away. And now 2,000 years later, it's back in the light. It didn't work. Who knows? It outlived its owner, the empire, the era, everything except its own shape. The Kofun dragon. In Japan, they kept this find for a long time, and its significance has only now become clear. We're talking about fragments of 5th century armor that were discovered several decades ago in the Tokasaki area. A re-examination showed that this is not just a decoration, but part of a protective element. The curved neck plate is made of iron and covered with gilded bronze. The surface is decorated with an open-work image of a dragon. The details are fastened with rivets. The lines are made with high precision, and the metal itself is crafted as if the item was made for a specific person. Analysis showed similarities with items from other Kofun period burial mounds, indicating the existence of workshops that worked for the elite and followed a unified artistic language. The weight and construction of the armor make it unsuitable for combat. Researchers believe that such elements were used during ceremonies, funerals, or diplomatic events. In the visual culture of East Asia, the dragon was associated with power, protection, and the legitimacy of the ruler. This image here is not decorative, but a symbol of status. The fragments come from large burial mounds of regional rulers. The size of the burials and quality of artifacts show a clear hierarchy and skilled craftsmanship in the society. What we see here is not a single object, but material evidence of how power in early Japan was established through metal, symbol, and form. A giant and a Viking curse. Imagine a perfect English landscape, a park at Enbury near Cambridge, green grass, sunshine, but in 2024, just a few centimeters beneath these flowers. Archaeologists from Cambridge University uncovered a pit that looks more like a scene from a horror movie. This was not an ordinary cemetery. In a pit 1,200 years old, there were bodies thrown in chaotic disorder. The researchers immediately realized they were looking at evidence of monstrous violence. One body was buried face down, with its hands and feet tied. In that era, this was a sign of the highest disgrace and the deprivation of the soul's peace. Another person was beheaded with such force that a deep mark from a sword or axe remained on the lower jaw. But among all these victims, one person stood out, who seems like a character from ancient sagas. He was 1 meter and 95 centimeters tall, which was remarkable for the early Middle Ages, when the average height of a man barely reached 165 centimeters. He was a real giant, but his life was nothing like a fairy tale. There was a perfectly round hole gaping in his skull. These are not sword wounds, but traces of trepanation from a complex ancient surgery. Scientists believe that this giant had a pituitary tumor, which caused his body to produce too much growth hormone. This caused not only gigantism, but also terrible headaches. The hole in the skull was an attempt by ancient healers to relieve the pressure and save him from suffering. He survived the surgery, but ended his journey in this common death pit. Who are these people and why were they killed? Archaeologists have two theories. If dental analysis confirms that they were locals, then it was a mass execution of criminals or prisoners during the era of King Offa. If the DNA shows Scandinavian roots, it suggests a bloody clash between the Anglo-Saxons and Vikings. In the 8th and 9th centuries, England was fragmented, and raids by northerners turned these peaceful fields into sites of mass slaughter. In this era, no coins, buckles, or weapons were found in the pit. They were stripped and deprived of everything before death. They lie there, mixed together like the refuse of history, reminding us of times when the right to live was determined only by the sharpness of your sword. Scientists continue to study the isotopes in their bones, and soon we will know for sure whether these were defenders of English lands or the very invaders from the north whose journey ended in this nameless pit. Serrated stones? In Southern California, amazing artifacts have been found that resemble bronze gears, similar to those previously discovered in Peru. These stone gears, known as the California cogged stones, range in size from 2 to 6 inches in diameter and up to 2 inches thick. Scientists believe that they were made sometime between 6,000 and 3,500 before Christ. Looking at these artifacts with modern eyes, they may seem primitive, but these stones have different features, such as cups, round indentations and notches along the edges, as well as patterns that look like muffins. Surprisingly, about 15% of them have a hole in the center, often a narrow one, on one side. Scientists also discovered a curious anomaly. In the middle, there is a perfect square hole, which would be difficult to reproduce even with modern technology. This suggests that their ancient creators were familiar with advanced technologies. The purpose of these stone discs still remains a mystery. Some suggest that they were used for certain ritual purposes, but who created these stones and why is still an open question. Today, the prevailing opinion is that these gears were used as ceremonial objects, but their meaning and symbolism are still up for discussion. Darius's gold. During the excavations in Persepolis, workers came across a stone box buried under the foundation of the Apadana Palace. Inside were 2 thin plates, one made of gold and the other of silver. They were placed there during the construction, about 2,500 years ago. During Darius the Great's reign, both plates were inscribed with cuneiform in 3 languages. Darius wanted the text to be understood. In different parts of the vast empire, he lists the lands, emphasizes his power, and thanks Ahura Mazda. This is not a decorative item and not part of a ritual. It is a statement about who built here, to whom the territory belonged, and under which god the palace stood. The plates are as well preserved as if newly made. The metal is intact and the inscriptions remain clear. They were intentionally hidden in the foundation, a secret, and as a sign for future generations, in case someone ever looks under the stone. Baran, in the thicket of Ur, in the south of present-day Iraq. In 1928, Leonard Woolley excavated the royal cemetery and pulled out from the rubble what at first looked like a broken wooden stick with lumps of metal. After restoration, a figure appears. An animal on its hind legs is reaching for a branched bush-like structure. It was given the poetic nickname Ram in the Thicket, although zoologically it's more of a goat with curled horns. It dates back to around 2550 before Christ, which means it's 4,500 years old. The figurines were found in the rich burial of a noble Sumerian, next to whom lay the sacrificial remains of 68 women and 5 men. It was a ritual of status. A person did not go to the afterlife alone. The ram is made of wood, covered with thin sheets of metal, copper, gilding, and is inlaid with lapis lazuli and shell. The diamond-shaped pattern on the base may refer to gadgets. The branching bush is often interpreted as the world tree, a connection between earth and the sky. There is a practical version. The figurines served as stands for bowls used in sacrifice rituals. The animal stands on its hind legs and supports the branch, where a vessel with a drink or sacrificial liquid could be placed. During the ritual, the Sumerian world of elite sacrifice, the work of the best craftsmen, the symbolism of the cosmos, and practical altar equipment are all concentrated in one small object. The ram reminds us that ancient people combined beauty, faith, grace, and daily use in one object, which is why such artifacts last for thousands of years. The oldest crossing of humanity. In the sands between Baghdad and Basra lies a place known as the birthplace of cities, ancient Sumerian Girsu. 5,000 years ago, the heart of the kingdom of Lagash beat here. It was here that humanity first began to record its thoughts en masse on clay tablets. But the main sensation of Girsu is not the text, but the oldest bridge on the planet. This brick bridge has stood here for more than 4,000 years. Just think about it. It is older than most of the empires we study in school. But the fate of this discovery is a real tragedy. In 1877, the French archaeologists who worked here resembled treasure hunters more than scientists. They rushed to find gold statues, plowing through ancient layers and destroying everything in their way. Looters who followed the archaeologists plundered and sold more than 35,000 cuneiform tablets. We lost an entire library of knowledge simply because of the excitement of the first explorers. The bridge itself was discovered in the 1920s, but for almost 100 years, no one understood what it was. It was called a temple, a sluice, a dam, and only recently did archaeologists officially confirm that it is a bridge. For a whole century, this unique structure stood defenseless against the scorching sun and winds of Iraq. Today, a large-scale rescue program is underway in Girsu. British specialists are teaching local archaeologists how to preserve these bricks so that the oldest crossing in the world can last at least another 1,000 years. Artifacts that shouldn't be here. In the south of Israel, archaeologists excavated a site that, at first glance, didn't seem remarkable. But everything changed when they began to study the items they found. They found clay vessels and bronze items in the ground, whose style doesn't match the local cultural tradition. The ornaments, shapes, even the composition of the alloy, all of this was more reminiscent of items previously found in other regions of the Middle East, and even farther away. There was no temple or permanent settlement nearby, just fragments that appeared intentionally brought here. It gives the impression that this place was used for rituals or temporary gatherings, possibly by nomadic tribes who had connections with distant cultures. Officially, the items are considered atypical for the region, but questions remain. Who brought them, for what purpose, and why exactly here? These are still just hypotheses, but the discovery stands out from the usual desert history. The Sword of Ramses, northwest Egypt, the archaeological site of Tel el-Yapkin on the coast. During the excavations here, a bronze sword was unearthed with the name of Ramses II engraved on it. The very same pharaoh who ruled for more than 60 years in the 13th century before Christ. Signed weapons are rare, so the find immediately became key. The layer in which the blade was found is associated with military activity on the coast. Archaeologists cautiously discuss several scenarios: garrison weapon, a trophy after a clash, or material evidence of battles with the so-called Sea Peoples. These are working theories for now. There is no definitive answer yet. Analyses are ongoing. The context is reinforced by other finds. Nearby, 2 limestone blocks with inscriptions were found. One repeats the name of Ramesses II, and the other mentions an official named Bey. In the same layer, a whole cow was found, placed as a sacrifice, and nearby there were burnt cow bones near the ovens. Such offerings are associated with ideas of power, abundance, and divine protection. In addition, a series of scarabs was collected. On one it reads, Amen, Lord of the Sky. On a fragment of a bronze ring, Amen Harakti. There are also beads with semi-precious inlays. Even if the sword was never used in battle, it connects a specific ruler to a specific shore. And if the connections with coastal wars are confirmed, we will have a direct artifact of Egypt's struggle for control over the sea. Terracotta water pipeline. Archaeologists have discovered a 2,600-year-old terracotta water pipeline at the ancient settlement of Kilade in Tamil Nadu, India. This discovery highlights the highly developed water supply systems of the civilization that flourished here thousands of years ago, and adds new information about the urban planning and engineering skills of the people of the Sangam era. Kilade, located 12 kilometers from Madurai, was first discovered in 2014. Since then, this site has become important for studying the Sangam period, which spans from 300 before Common Era to 300 Common Era. Over the past decades, more than 20,000 artifacts have been found at this site, indicating an advanced society that excelled in brick production, as well as the creation of beads and terracotta items. The recently discovered cylindrical terracotta water pipe, according to representatives of the Tamil Nadu State Archaeology Department, consists of 6 sections, each 36 centimeters long and 18 centimeters wide. These sections were carefully joined together, forming a water pipe 174 centimeters long. It is believed that it was used for transporting drinking water, which demonstrates advanced hydraulic engineering skills. This discovery also broadens the understanding that advanced engineering practices existed not only in northern India, but also in the southern regions, indicating a more technologically advanced ancient India than previously thought. The oldest working compass. Archaeologists from the Estonian Maritime Museum have revealed details of recent discoveries at the excavation site of a medieval merchant ship in Tallinn. The ship, discovered a year ago, is remarkably well preserved and reveals secrets of the past. A particularly valuable find was one of the oldest dry-card magnetic compasses in Europe. This is unique because usually the sensitive elements of compasses are placed in liquid. On board, they also found antique instruments, worn leather shoes, a wooden spoon, and the remains of 2 ship rats. The remarkably well-preserved remains of the ship were found near the Estonian river Karjapea. At first, it was assumed that these were the remains of a cog, the main Hanseatic trading vessel, but the presence of a second mast suggests a possible transitional type. Between the cog and the hulk, the oldest meteorite, meet Erk-Chech 002. Not just an ordinary meteorite, but a true great-grandfather from space. It's 4.6 billion years old. It was found in the Sahara Desert and became a record holder. It's the oldest volcanic rock on Earth, an andesitic achondrite, one of the first cosmic inhabitants. Scientists from Australia decided to uncover all its secrets, to understand how planets formed and what was happening in the solar system at the dawn of its existence. But our old fellow had a surprise in store. The isotope aluminum-26 was the main source of heat in the early evolution of the solar system. In addition, specialists usually determine the age of meteorites by its amount, but it turned out that at the beginning of the solar system's existence, this aluminum was distributed unevenly. So the old methods of determining age are now not so accurate. This discovery has turned scientists' understanding upside down. Now, to determine the age of a cosmic object, a new approach is needed. The skull from the quarry is the next incredible story about the famous Piltdown Man. We are going back to 1912 to the small village of Piltdown in England. In a gravel quarry, they found the bones of an ancient human who lived more than 500,000 years ago, but not just any human. This skull looked like a mix between an ape and a human, as if it were the missing link in evolution. Archaeologists, including the famous Charles Dawson, were thrilled and even named the find after him, Eoanthropus dawsoni. More bones and a canine tooth, which definitely belonged to this ancient human, were found in the quarry. The Piltdown Man became a celebrity and was considered an ancestor of modern humans. But in 1953, the truth came out. It was all a forgery. The skull was stained and made to look ancient, and the jaw belonged to an orangutan. Even the canine tooth was painted. Many people suspect Dawson himself of creating this forgery. There are other suspects as well, including the famous writer Arthur Conan Doyle, but the mystery remains unsolved. The Piltdown Man became one of the most notorious archaeological hoaxes. As you can see, even scientists can be deceived. Do you believe this story? The mystery of the Roman dodecahedron, and now a discovery that is officially called an archaeologist's nightmare. In 2024 in England, in the village of Norton Teason, an object was found that made scientists admit, we have no idea how the Romans lived. In fact, it's a Roman dodecahedron, a hollow 12-sided object made of copper alloy, with holes of different sizes on each face and small knobs on the corners. In the past 200 years, about 130 such objects have been found in Europe. But the 2024 discovery is unique because it was found in situ, in its original archaeological layer, next to Roman pottery. What's the intrigue? In the vast, vast legacy of Rome, in thousands of scrolls, letters, and books, there is not a single mention of this object. No drawings, no instructions. It's not a weapon. It's too fragile. It's not a measuring device. Every dodecahedron found has different sizes and weights. It's not a standard tool. The latest theories, from 2025, suggest that it was a magical artifact for divination or a ritual object of a secret cult. The fact that it was found in a pit that seems to have been deliberately dug for it suggests that the owner was trying to hide or bury it. The dodecahedron remains the greatest unsolved technical mystery of the Roman Empire. Janus? In gold beneath the Krakow Wawel Castle, archaeologists discovered a remarkable artifact, a gold ring from the 11th-12th centuries with a two-faced design, unique in Polish history. Unlike the typical Christian symbols of that era, the ring's decoration with two faces may indicate a connection to Janus, the Roman god of beginnings and transitions, who has no equivalent in Greek mythology. This rare find demonstrates the high level of craftsmanship of its creators. The ring, which has a thickness of 1.5 millimeters, a diameter of 4 millimeters, and a circumference of 57 millimeters, is distinguished by its intricate finish. This makes it exceptional among other early medieval jewelry found in Poland, which was usually either undecorated or had simple geometric patterns. Researcher Jerzy Szybinski emphasizes the uniqueness of the ring, suggesting that it may have been made by local craftsmen and possibly had the right to belong to the upper class of society during the Piast dynasty. The ring was discovered in the basement of the Danish Tower, built by order of Ladislaw II Jagiello during the castle's reconstruction. Sword from the Vistula, Poland, Vistula River, Tarkominter area. A fisherman notices a piece of iron sticking out of the water in the shallows, pulls it, and retrieves a whole medieval sword. The blade was almost undamaged in the deposits. You can see the hilt, the round pommel, and a cross sign on the handle. The fisherman gave the weapon to restorers in Warsaw, who confirmed it is an authentic medieval sword. Further analysis of the metal and blade shape will provide more details. The river changes course, erodes banks, and reveals things hidden in the Ill for centuries. So, the weapon could have fallen off a boat, sunk during a crossing, or been thrown into the water after a battle. Now the blade is undergoing conservation. The corrosion will be removed, the metal will be stabilized, the micro-cuts and edges will be checked, and they will try to read the stamps. For us, this is a chance to catch a living piece of medieval Poland, not a museum artifact, but a sword that lay for centuries in the riverbed safe of the Vistula, and it chose its own moment to return. A message from two eras. Sometimes archaeologists find objects that seem like a glitch in the matrix of time. In 2024 in Essex County, an ordinary metal detector enthusiast stumbled upon a small silver signet ring. But when the artifact was cleaned of centuries-old dirt, the researchers gasped. It was not just a medieval object. It was a true time hybrid. The base of the signet is made of high-quality silver from the period between 1200 and 1400 AD, but a bright red gemstone is set in its center. Carnelian, with a skillfully engraved image of a chariot and a charioteer, and this stone is Roman. It was created in the 1st century before Christ, that is, 1,300 years before the silver setting even came into existence. On the silver edge of the seal, there is an inscription in Latin, Secretum Ricardi, which translates as Richard's secret. So, who is this Richard? Scientists are sure that he was a very wealthy and influential person of his time. In the Middle Ages, owning an ancient Roman gem was the highest sign of status. It was a way to tell those around you, I am so important that I own a treasure. Gems like these from forgotten times are called intaglios, Richard probably found this carnelian at the ruins of a Roman villa or bought it from traders who brought it from the very heart of the fallen empire. He had a jeweler make a setting so he could wear this symbol of power around his neck. The seal includes a special loop for a cord. For Richard, this artifact was more than an ornament. In an era when almost no one could read or write, a personal seal served as a signature. Every time Richard pressed this Roman stone into hot wax on a secret letter, it was as if he was sending his will across the centuries. Today, this find is officially recognized as a treasure of Great Britain. It reminds us that the urge for history and collecting antiquities has always been in our blood. Richard kept his secret for 800 years, until an ordinary metal detectorist dug it out from the embrace of the earth to tell us about the vanity and taste of a medieval aristocrat. The importance of the wheel. Modern civilization would look completely different without the ancient invention of the wheel. The exact time and place of its invention are still a matter of debate. Most likely, the wheel was invented independently by different civilizations at different times. The simplicity of the wheel suggests that it could have appeared even in cultures that seemed to have no need for it. The earliest evidence of the wheel dates back to the period between 4500 and 3300 before Christ. In Mesopotamia, where it was used as a potter's wheel, early wheels for transportation were made from solid wooden boards. The improvement of the wheel's design occurred around 2200 to 1550 before Christ during the Middle Bronze Age, when spoked wheels and chariots appeared. Nowadays, the wheel is essential for almost all types of transportation, not just land-based. Airplanes use wheels for takeoff and landing. Most helicopters are also equipped with wheels, and even maglev systems that move on a magnetic cushion have retractable wheels for slow movement. The wheel plays an important role, not only in transportation. Without gears and cogwheels, we might still be in the Dark Ages. Roman swords in Israel. In ancient caves near the Dead Sea, where the dry climate has preserved the secrets of past centuries, researchers from Israel made a remarkable discovery. In the depths of these caves, they discovered 4 Roman swords. Remarkably, 3 of them were still in their original wooden scabbards. The reason for the expedition was an inscription in ancient Hebrew on a stalactite found half a century ago. This inscription indicated the possible presence of ancient artifacts or objects of cult significance. According to experts from the Israel Antiquities Authority, Jewish rebels may have captured these swords from Roman legionaries 1,900 years ago and hidden them for later use in their struggle against the occupiers. The spatai that were found were indeed the main weapons of Roman soldiers at that time. They had long, straight blades and were double-edged. The 4th sword, with a ring-shaped pommel, probably belonged to a pilum, an ancient Roman throwing spear. These swords are not just weapons. They are evidence of an era, a bridge between the past and the present. Such finds are quite rare because iron is prone to corrosion. But thanks to the unique conditions in this region, historical artifacts have remained intact for centuries. Why was this road flooded? On the coast of Israel, archaeologists found an unusual road that was flooded many years ago. This section, which was recently studied, was part of an ancient trade route that was used back in antiquity. The road passed through several settlements and led to the port, but for some reason, it was flooded. The mystery of this discovery is that its surfaces are much better preserved than expected for objects this old. The stone slabs that were used for paving were almost undamaged, which makes scientists wonder about the technology that was used in its construction. However, the puzzle that baffles people is that no one knows for sure why the road was flooded. Some suggest that it was the result of an earthquake, while others think that water could have gotten in due to changes in the climate or the sea. All of this remains an open question, and research is ongoing. With colorful masks and golden tongues in the historic district of Albanasa in Egypt, a group of Spanish archaeologists led by Dr. Maite Mascoro and Dr. Esther Pons Melado from the University of Barcelona made a significant discovery. The scientists discovered ancient tombs carved into the rocks, as well as a number of valuable artifacts, which allowed for a deeper study of the history of this region. The team of archaeologists found tombs that date back to the eras of the Ptolemies and the Roman Empire, discovering a unique burial method. One of the most amazing discoveries is a terracotta statue of Isis Aphrodite, adorned with crowns made of leaves, which is an important addition to the study of the art of that era. During the excavations, mummies from the Roman era were also found, decorated with gilded and colorful funerary masks. An interesting feature was the discovery of golden tongues in the mouths of some mummies, which indicates ancient burial customs intended to keep the deceased able to speak in the afterlife. Adelia Casa, head of the Central Administration of Antiquities of Middle Egypt, stressed the significance of the ruined building's discovery. With unique drawings depicting plants, grapevines, and animals, these images provide valuable insight into the culture and life in Al-Bakhnasa. In ancient times, how were tombs protected from looting? Throughout human history, there have always been cases of disturbing the rest of the deceased, especially when it comes to ancient tombs. Often, valuables from crypts ended up in private collections, since the deceased were frequently buried with family jewelry. But in the cemeteries of medieval Europe, vandalism was a common occurrence, and wealthy families protected graves with metal grills, which later came to be known as mortsafes. These devices appeared in England in the 18th century. Ironically, during the Age of Enlightenment, cemeteries suffered especially, since before the 18th century pathology was prohibited. In 1832, the English Parliament allowed the purchase of bodies for research, but before that, the illegal and profitable business was already thriving. Including grave desecration, the church reacted negatively to exhumation, preaching sermons about the torments of those whose bodies had been desecrated. People looked for ways to protect graves, hired guards, watchtowers, concrete coffins, and mortsafes, but such measures were only available to the wealthy. The poor used stones, layers of turf, and even planted vegetation to protect the graves of their loved ones. In 1781, metal coffins appeared in England, but only wealthy citizens could afford them due to their high cost. Mortsafes came in three types: tall fences, cages with heavy spikes and large boulders, and mort towers, tall crypts with several niches for family members and numerous locks. These protective measures reflect troubled times when even after death, the peace of the deceased was threatened by the desire of others to possess a part of their history or wealth. The holy grail of shipwrecks. If we're talking about quality and scale, we can't ignore the main prize of worldview, which humanity only approached in 2025-2026. This is the Spanish galleon San Jose, which sank in 1708 off the coast of Colombia. It's called the Holy Grail because it holds a treasure on board, which today is valued at $20 billion. These are mountains of gold bars, silver, and chests of emeralds, but for us archaeologists, the value lies elsewhere. Thanks to the great depth and cold water, the ship has been preserved in perfect condition. In 2025, a robot in sand managed to film Ming Dynasty Chinese porcelain that looks as if it was just placed on the table. A real legal battle broke out around the San Jose between Colombia, Spain, and treasure hunters. But Colombia declared this ship an archaeological heritage. And now we are witnessing the first operation in history to recover artifacts from such a depth without damage. Each cannon brought up tells the story of the final moments of the battle with the British squadron. This is not just gold. It's a cast of colonial empires frozen at the moment of the explosion. Greetings from the Neolithic. This magnificent artifact, a dagger with a bear's head, was found in the Pyhäjoki area of Finland and dates back to the Stone Age, around 4000 to 2000 before Christ. Its exquisite design, made from striped stone, demonstrates the high level of skill of ancient craftsmen. The bear's head on the dagger's handle is not only a decoration, but possibly symbolized strength, endurance, and spiritual guidance. In a cultural context, it could have been used in rituals related to hunting or the veneration of animals that were considered sacred guardian spirits. The bear in the mythology of ancient Finnish tribes was a highly revered creature associated with the world of ancestors and nature spirits. There are no obvious signs of use on the blade, which may indicate its ceremonial significance. Such an artifact may have belonged to an important person in the community, for example, a chief or a shaman who used it for special rituals. Full scan of the Titanic. For the first time in history, a complete digital 3D scan of the Titanic has been performed. Hundreds of thousands of images were compiled into a model that allows you to examine every inch of the sunken liner. The scan revealed many details that were previously inaccessible: destroyed decks, personal belongings, and individual structural elements. Experts paid special attention to the stern, the portholes, and the site where the hull broke. For example, they discovered that one of the portholes exactly matched eyewitness accounts describing the moment of the collision with the iceberg. The model also confirmed the importance of the engineering section until the very end. It continued to supply electricity, which allowed the lights to stay on longer and gave passengers more time to evacuate. This aligns with reports that the ship's lights remained on until the end. The scan doesn't just provide an image, it's a tool that allows us to study the Titanic as if it were on land, not at the bottom of the sea. There's something especially strange about viewing something that perished so clearly. Modern saw. During excavations in Turkey, in the city of Çolak in Rum, archaeologists discovered a unique saw about 2,250 years old at the site of the capital of the ancient Kursk Empire. This tool, the first of its kind and strikingly similar to modern saws, was found by a team led by Andreas Schachner from the German Archaeological Institute. The saw was discovered in the ruins of a building whose age matches that of the artifact. It is amazing that in terms of appearance and characteristics, the ancient saw is almost indistinguishable from modern tools. About 20 centimeters long, it was found on the slope where a large palace complex of structures is located. This find became the first tool of its kind from the 3rd century before Christ discovered in the Roman world. The largest ship of the Middle Ages. Straight from Stalina, the heart of the Estonian capital, comes news that is making us rewrite the history of medieval voyages. A sunken ship was found beneath the stone pavement of a main street, initially emitting a smell. Archaeologists were sure that it was a cog, a small single-masted ship actively used by Hanseatic League merchants in the 14th century. But what surprises were there? It turned out that this vessel was not just bigger than a typical cog. It's a real giant, most likely built at a Scandinavian shipyard, and its design is so unique that even experienced experts in maritime disasters can't hide their amazement. Did you know that in the Middle Ages, moss was usually used to insulate ship hulls, but on this ship, they also added animal fur coated with resin? This method was common in Scandinavia, unlike in the North German regions, where typical cogs were built. And what do you think about the fact that plank constructions were found on the wreck, which only became widely used centuries after the supposed construction date of this ship? There are more and more questions. The ship sank right in the center of the city, where Lutzy Street is now located. Judging by the damage, its hull was facing the shore and was visible to all passers-by. At the moment of discovery, the length of the ship was estimated at about 10 meters, but during further excavations, it increased to 20. This makes it one of the largest medieval ships found in Europe. The highlight of this discovery was the items left on board the ship: fruits, fish, and even more than 20 pairs of leather shoes, which have been perfectly preserved for centuries. But what amazed the archaeologists the most? Rats, intact rats, buried under the tar that leaked from the burst barrels. A rare coin. In Jerusalem, Israeli archaeologists, during excavations near Jerusalem, discovered a unique artifact, a piece of an ancient silver coin estimated to be 2,550 years old. This find is one of only 6 coins of this type ever discovered in Israel. The coins belong to a group of very early coins that were minted in the 6th to 5th centuries before Common Era, outside of Israel, in ancient Greece, Cyprus, and Turkey. This artifact was created in an era when coins had just begun to be used, and its discovery provides important information about the transition from weighing silver to using coins as a means of payment. The discovered coin was deliberately cut into 2 pieces, which indicates that it was used as a weighed piece of silver in the 4th century before Common Era. Although coins were already in circulation at that time, a pattern made by a square stamp can be seen on one side of the coin. This indicates that coins with raised images appeared later thanks to the development of more advanced minting technologies. An industrial metropolis in the clouds. And now let's move to an altitude of 2,000 meters to the harsh mountains of Uzbekistan at the end of 2024. A sensation occurred here, which is being compared to the discovery of Machu Picchu. Using light detection and ranging laser scanning technology, archaeologists discovered the lost metropolis of Tugunbulak. History says a city of this size shouldn't exist here. It's too high, too cold, with little oxygen, and farming is nearly impossible. But light detection and ranging cut through the ground and revealed the outlines of powerful fortresses, districts, and most surprisingly, huge smelting furnaces. It turned out that Tugunbulak was the industrial heart of the Silk Road. Its inhabitants were true masters of iron, and they consciously chose to live in extreme conditions to mine ore and forge the best steel in the region. The city existed for hundreds of years, controlling key trade routes, and then simply disappeared, turning into hills that for 1,000 years were thought to be ordinary mountains. This discovery reminds us that we still have no idea about the existence of entire empires that once thrived in places where we thought survival was impossible. The plate turned out to be an important artifact. Recently, a gold plate dating back to the 6th or 7th century AD was found in England. It was discovered by a metal detectorist in the area of Climping, West Sussex. This rare item, representing early medieval art, is now on display in the Archaeological Gallery of the Littlehampton Museum. The plate most likely served as a sword ornament, although it could have been part of other valuable items. A museum representative called it a tiny masterpiece and noted the exquisite filigree made of twisted gold wire, a vivid testament to the skill of Anglo-Saxon craftsmen of that time. Decorative elements of this level speak to the importance placed on the art of weapon ornamentation in the early Middle Ages. Now visitors to the Littlehampton Museum can closely appreciate the exquisite design and complex techniques used by 6th century craftsmen on the stone. Due to the drought in the Brazilian region, the water level in the Amazon River has reached a record low, which led to the discovery of faces and other figures engraved on the ancient stone, which is more than 2,000 years old. These petroglyphs, including images of animals and other natural forms, were found on the banks of the Rio Negro at an archaeological site known as Pontos das Lajes. Researchers estimate that the drawings are between 1,000 and 2,000 years old. On the stones, in addition to images of faces and water, there are also grooves indicating that the site was used for making stone tools. Archaeologists discovered 25 groups of engravings on a single rock, and the find indicates that this place was used for sharpening various tools. In addition, pottery shards were found at this site. Although Pontos Lajes is recognized as an archaeological monument, the petroglyphs have not yet been studied. Think about what other secrets the Amazon hides and share your thoughts in the comments. Labyrinths where there is nothing to look for. Germany, present day. While preparing a site for the construction of wind turbines, archaeologists came across an ancient ditch from the Neolithic era, which is more than 6,000 years old. But when they began the excavation, a massive stone slab was discovered beneath layers of prehistoric earth, and the researchers froze in anticipation. Usually, such slabs cover the rich burials of chieftains, but when the stone was lifted, there was neither gold nor bones underneath. There was only a black void. The archaeologists discovered an Erdstall, one of the most mysterious types of underground structures in Europe. It's a narrow, winding tunnel carved into the hard soil during the late Middle Ages. Think about these dimensions. The height of the passage is just over a meter, and the width is only 50 to 70 centimeters. An adult can't even turn around here. It's only possible to crawl forward. In complete darkness, the tunnel goes deep for dozens of meters, twisting and winding. So what's the main mystery about these tunnels? There's nothing that indicates how they were used. There is no soot from torches on the walls, no niches for storing grain or wine, and no signs that anyone ever lived here. In the tunnel under Rheinsteig, they found only a horseshoe, a fox skeleton, and a layer of charcoal at the bottom. The creepiest part is that at its narrowest point, the entrance was intentionally sealed from inside with heavy stones. Scientists have puzzled over their purpose for centuries. A shelter without ventilation. If the enemy finds the entrance, the tunnel becomes a mass grave. It's too complicated to build ritual paths for souls. That's the most popular theory. Local legends call them holes to the underworld. People believe narrow passages allowed souls of the dead to enter another world or let evil spirits escape. Archaeologists from the LDA agency noticed an important detail. This tunnel was built right inside a pagan burial ground that was already 3,000 years old at that time. The medieval builders specifically chose a place that had a bad reputation. Perhaps they believed that an ancient curse would protect their hiding place, or were they trying to lock away something ancient and evil? Deep underground, the Erdstall tunnels remain one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. Why spend years of backbreaking labor to carve out passages in the earth where you can't even stand up straight? The answer may have remained there forever, behind the sealed walls, in the silence of the German fields. The treasures of Ghana. 2 leading British museums have reached an agreement with the government of Ghana to return the gold artifacts stolen in the 19th century. In May of last year, Asantehene, the King of Ghana, met in London with the directors of the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum. It was decided to transfer 32 gold artifacts to Ghana for 3 years. These items were taken by the British 150 years ago, in 1874, when the British looted the royal palace in Ghana. In 1996, there was another military operation that led to further looting. In a joint statement, the museums acknowledged that the seized items are cultural property, have historical significance for the Asante people, and are connected to British colonial history. Among the returned exhibits are a golden peace pipe, purchased at auction for £85 sterling, as well as rings, sheaths, discs, soles, knives, and necklaces. The English are concerned that this agreement could set a precedent for the return of other items seized during colonial wars. I am very glad that valuable museum exhibits are finally starting to gradually return to their homeland. Dunes frozen for billions of years. And finally, a discovery that makes us feel like grains of sand in the ocean of time. In Burkina Faso, in the village of Fabidougou, there are rocks that archaeologists call stone guardians. At first glance, it's an ordinary natural wonder, similar to the Australian bungle, but geology says otherwise. These rocks are 2 billion years old. Just think about that number. That's the middle Proterozoic. At that time, there were no plants or animals on Earth, only bacteria in the ocean. Usually, rocks of this age are transformed into metamorphic rock under enormous pressure, losing their original appearance. But the Fabidougou rocks are an exception. They look surprisingly young. You can still see the ripple marks on their surface left by the currents of the ancient ocean 2 billion years ago. Essentially, these are fossilized sand dunes that have been preserved in their original form. Different rates of weathering created this layered cake of stories. This is the archaeology of the planet itself. Looking at these domes, we see the world as it was before life began. They are silent witnesses to how the solid ground we walk on today was formed. The truth is always buried deeper than it seems. Which of these artifacts made you question what you learned from textbooks? I'm waiting for your thoughts in the comments below the video. Thank you for watching until the end. Goodbye, everyone.